Hello to the Horns Diaspora podcast listeners. I am Marga Jonas Bula. Welcome back to the fifth episode. The Horns Diaspora podcast discusses major unfolding events in the Horn of Africa that concern members of the diaspora communities. It also entertains the stories of people whose achievements are contributing to both their homelands and hosting communities. My guest today is Dr. Yusuf Sheikh Omar, who is originally from Somalia, now residing in United Kingdom. He holds PhD from School of Science, La Torbe University, Australia. His dissertation focuses on social integration experiences and perspectives of young Somalis in Australia and the USA. In a nutshell, his major focus is on African diaspora, identity, social integration into the settlement countries, peace and conflict, skills transfer, and so on. He is currently a research associate at SOS University of London and the director of Ilesnabad, an organization working in the area of peace building, dialogue, and development in the Horn of Africa and in diaspora. Hello, Dr. Yusuf. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Horns Diaspora podcast.
Thank you, Merga, for having me. Really appreciate for this excellent introduction. Just to correct, SOAS, S-O-A-S, actually stands for School of Oriental and African Studies.
Thank you very much. I will take that correction and our audience can get now what it means. And also, I would like to go back and ask you, did I pronounce Ilesnabad? Is that the right pronunciation?
Yes, it's really a right pronunciation. Ilesnabad, it's a Somali word that actually means a light of peace. It's a light of peace in English. So my organization is Ilesnabad Calling Dialogue and Development Initiative. So I really wanted, when I and my friends actually established this organization, the Somalis to identify the first word themselves. By the time they see Ilesnabad, then they can completely identify and feel some sort of connection. And then non-Somalis can also understand the major activities of the organization, the second part of the name, Dialogue and Development Initiative, which actually deals with the dialogue, peace, reconciliation, and all this stuff.
That is very interesting, the way you started. That is a light. How far some of these objectives you mentioned are related to diaspora issues?
Yes. The diaspora coming from the Horn of Africa, be Somalis, Ethiopians, or Eritreans, or Sudanese, South Sudan, they are part of their countries of origin. They came to the diaspora with all these cultural packages, the trauma, the negative memories, the social divides, the conflict perception, conflict experience as well. So the name and the title of the organization relates both to those who remained back home, who actually need some sort of dialogue, reconciliation, and stability, and also the Horn of African diaspora, who also need some sort of emotional, healing, reconciliation among them as well. Providing them a constructive, a platform, of dialogue, the talk, and all this stuff. Yeah. So it's well known, any migrants and new arrivals will bring with them all these cultural packages and the difficulties to the diaspora. Yeah. So in that sense, the term of relation about dialogue and development relates both to the Horn of African people back home in Africa and also to the Horn of African diaspora in the diaspora.
Thank you very much. What made you interested in researching peace, conflict resolution, identities, belonging, and diaspora topics?
Yes, absolutely, you are right. We are a diasporic, and we have a multiple identities. We are Africans. Maybe you are a German. In a sense, I'm an Australian. Also, my second nationality, an Australian as well. So we have multiple identities in a sense. So we need really to understand the multiple identities we have and how that multiple identities can facilitate in our life experience, either if we stay here in the West or go to Africa or to our countries of origin, and also what kind of experience we can learn from the settlement countries and that we could potentially transfer to back home, experiences related to the peace building, to the conflict resolution we learn from other cultures as well, or culturally relevant societies, or the other societies which actually have the same violence and civil war to the Horn of Africa society. So they are all interconnected identity, the peace building, the development, the transnational identity, or what some people actually call the, nationalist in distance. Yeah, maybe you feel, you are an Ethiopian, you are Oromo, you are an Ethiopian, maybe you are a Germany. Yeah, so they're all interconnected.
I just would like to ask, I guess you've been living abroad for a long time. So how does it feel researching diaspora-related topics, being in diaspora? Have you ever felt like you are researching yourself?
Yes, of course, I can identify myself. Also, diaspora identity is wide and huge. There is a intergenerational identity. There is, the younger generation who, grew up or maybe born in the diaspora and who are not completely Africanist in a sense. Maybe their identification with the local culture, with the culture of the settlement countries is much more stronger than their identification with the back home. And then you have the older generation like me, or middle-aged generation as well, who were born, in Africa and brought with them very strong identity foundation from Africa, the language, the custom and the culture as well. So I can relate both of them. Middle-aged generation, the older generation, and also the younger generation through my interaction with them, talking to them, having the same memories as them, or trying to learn also from their memories as well. So and there is a gender issue in the diaspora as well. Men and women could actually integrate in different ways into the new societies, either positive or negative. Women might feel kind of, gaining and having more opportunities when you compare, their situation back home. You can see them, the Horn of African women are really doing well in terms of education, in terms of politics. We have Ilhan Omar, who is a congresswoman. There is a young Eritrean woman was elected as an MP in Germany a few days ago. There is the other one from Africa. She was a minister in Italy. And we have many, young, African women who are doing really very much well in the terms of politics. So if our girls are given the same opportunities they have here in the West, back home they can do even better than back home. So that's a gender stuff. And then you can see the other side, the African, men who feel kind of losing their kingdom and their, privilege and status, social status they had back home, as a strong African man, they should be served, and respected. But when they come here, they really confront a new identity, of equality, gender equality. They are exposed to the feminist perspective in which women are extremely empowered. So they feel a kind of lost. And that's why you see a lot of Horn of African men are, particularly the older generation, going back to Africa to find their lost kingdom, in a sense. So that's the gender issues in many ways.
Yeah, I will come back to that specifically about the gender issue. There was a report from BBC in September regarding that, and we'll talk about that. But I want to reflect on what you said, that being in diaspora, you might have success in education, in different opportunities, employment opportunities,
yes,
and so on.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is always something missing as part of your body, like from home or from land of origin. What do you miss from where you born and grew up? What did you miss that you say, oh, I wish I could have that?
Yeah, 100%. If you ask anyone, there's always something missing. Even those who are born here in the UK, even the British people, if you ask them, they say, oh, we're missing something somehow, somewhere. Even some, may tell you they're missing, traveling around the world because of the COVID-19 and all this stuff. So as an African migrant, of course, I miss, where I was born, the streets I knew, the friends I had before the civil war in Somalia, who are all of them shattered and scattered around the world. And I have no connection, almost all of them, with exception, a few cases. I miss that. But alternatively, I've also developed some positive, aspects here in the UK or Australia, gaining new friends, the new connections and, the new skills, the new language, the new practice, as they say, a bigger picture in a sense. So if you lose something, alternatively also you gain the other thing. So in my philosophy, if there is a challenge, there is also a chance within the challenge itself. So I miss that, as I said, the food, the culture, the custom, but also alternatively, I got and I gained a lot also here, in the West. So the culture is not static; it's an ongoing change all the time. We acquire new, cultural elements and new things, and we lose something. That's a part of life, anyways, and I accepted that.
Yeah, of course. Comes first the people that you, like you mentioned, the people you grew up with, your family and so on, but at the same time or on second stage, the food is always what I'm fighting for here in diaspora. For our next conversation, I would like to make your recent publication, co-authored with Paul Asquith of Shabaka, an organization working on diaspora as well. The piece covers political crisis and its negative consequences, one of it being displacement in countries like Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and Sudan, and diaspora's contribution in that. From the outset, it presented the dichotomous role of diaspora, one being as peacemakers and the other being as peacebreakers. Considering the current situation in the Horn, Which role are members of the diaspora community playing, and in which aspect? Example, political, socio-economic, and other.
Yeah, that's really, Merga, that's really a good question. And I think it's the major question. It's really very, very important to understand that. Diaspora are similar to their counterparts back home. They are so divided. We have back home in Ethiopia, in Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, so divided communities. Politically, particularly politically. Some people actually are in line, with the governments, and others are in line with the opposition leaders and opposition groups, and some are in between in the gray, area. So the diaspora, as I said, there are others back home. They are so divided. They contribute in many ways. Politically, I cannot also generalize. We have some, country differences. I can't compare Somalia to Eritrea. Eritrea is quite a very secretive and a military-minded government in which the diaspora have no really a free movement and access to do whatever they like. I can't compare that condition to Somalia, a country that cannot control its borders, a country that's protected by non-Somali soldiers, AMISOM, the African soldiers from Uganda, from Burundi, from Ethiopia, from Kenya, and Djibouti, and you can name them. A country that's really open. Somalia is extremely open. A country in which the president is a diasporic himself, from the state, the prime minister, he's a diasporic from Sweden. The cabinet, 80%, I argue they are from the diaspora.
Yeah.
And maybe the parliament, maybe half or close to half are from the diaspora. So it's a diaspora country in a sense. It's a country run by the diaspora. So you can apply that to the every life aspect in Somalia. Be the education, be the economic, the business, the development. They do a lot. So I can't compare that situation to Eritrea, which diaspora, unless they support unconditionally to the system, they cannot do anything in Eritrea.
Yeah.
So in Eritrea, their contribution is really very limited unless they are associated with the government. And I can understand Eritrean government is trying in many ways to divide Eritrean communities in the diaspora, infiltrate and even control them, even if they are in the North America or in Europe, through the embassies, through their own, intelligence services and all this stuff in many ways. And then we have Ethiopia, a country so divided, we have what's going on now in Tigray, I can't assume that Tigrayan diaspora are in line with Abiy Ahmed in many ways. I think they are in the opposition. And we have the Oromo, the largest ethnic community, almost half of the Ethiopian population, who are in their aspiration also, many of them are in the opposition. They are the opposite with the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, this centralistic perspective based on the Abyssinian philosophy of Amhara and Tigray now is out in any ways, but Amhara philosophy. So Oromo is also divided. So many of them, many Oromian, leaders, some of them from the diaspora, like Mohammed Jawari, are in the prison, or maybe in the detention. I don't know exactly.
Jawar Mohammed is.
Jawar Mohammed, yes, exactly.
Detention,
Yeah, exactly. So I can understand some, Ethiopian diaspora are actually in line and support with Abiy Ahmed. They could be, some Oromos, of course, some Oromos support him. Some Somalis from the Somali region also may support him, and some others and Amhara, Oromo maybe completely they may support. So we have that kind of picture. And then we have Sudan and South Sudan. So anyway. In details, politically they are so divided. I mean, the Horn of African communities, Horn of African diasporas are so divided, as I said at the beginning. But economic-wise, yes, they contribute a lot in many ways through supporting their own families, through the remittance, such a remittance sent to their own families, and the relatives can also, help the country, economic boom. When you send maybe $100 a month to your family or your relative, that 100 can actually invest in the Ethiopian country or Somalia in a sense, and families receiving, remittance have access to education. I mean, their children have access to education, the training and all this stuff. Humanitarian, side, Horn of African diaspora are also extremely active in helping their, people back home, through their villages, through their own network, through their ethnic, communities, through their clans in many ways. Healthy-wise, yes, they also do. I know in the Oromo, particularly the Oromo from the North America, have been sending a lot of medical equipment to the, Oromo institutions, universities and the hospitals, first aid, and many books as well. And also the Somalis equally, also almost at the same. Eritrea also is on the same, level. Education as well. For instance, in Somalia, I can use as a case study. They run, many schools, from primary school to the universities and to every, life aspect in the education. And then we have a young Horn of African generation like you and many others who have skills and can fill the gap. They go back, to the Horn of Africa to fill the gap in which the locals do not have relevant skills, be at the government department or the private sector. So that's the gap skill. That's what they call the diaspora knowledge and skills transfer as a nation, building. That's the younger generation. The younger generation might not actually necessarily send the money, or most of them actually, they do not send the money. They grow up in the individualistic culture, Western, lifestyle. They don't understand to give someone, who is a relative in distance money. They ask why they don't work for themselves, why they don't help themselves.
Yeah.
But they are happy at the same time to go there and transfer their skills that will affect in the long term in a positive ways. And it's a part of the nation building and the peace building. And then we have the old generation who are less skilled or have very minimum level of skills, who their qualifications and knowledge back home are not recognized here in the West. So what they do is they actually transfer money. They work hard in the manufacturers, so drivers in the manual jobs, cleaning, some other professionals or non-professional work. So they support their families. Yeah. So in that sense, they actually contribute in every life aspect. Yeah. But what is needed is some sort of cooperation and collaboration and partnership.
Mm-hmm. We will come back to the diaspora's contribution, specifically regarding investments later on. But let's stay on the topic of peacemaking and peace breaking.
Yes.
And there is this also paradoxical view where states in the Horn of Africa accuses scholars, politicians, and activists from creating havoc to even of plotting coups, as stated also in your publication. And members of the diaspora, on the other hand, perceive conflict as a legitimate response to the social injustices that forced them to leave their countries of origin. How do you see these both assertions?
Yes, before I responded to your answer, everything I'm talking, it comes under the peace building. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about the development, when you talk about the business, when you talk about the political participation, the freedom of speech, the dialogue. These are the pillars of the peace building. The peace building and the development are the two sides of one coin, and you can't separate them. I don't believe that kind of peace that itself, separate from life. That's not peace, basically, in a sense. Okay, come to your question. Yes, academics and scholars are trained to speak from their minds, critically and openly, and they correct what's wrong and provide evidences and also facts, and therefore they have a right to talk what they know, and this is a part of their responsibilities, basically, to contribute to the nation building through their pen, through their and knowledge. They want freedom. They need a freedom. Of course, they need a freedom. You can't be an academic or a scholar unless you talk from your mind in free ways. You can express your feelings in a way. Also, you can't harm the others. In a way, you can't violate the rights of others. That's what they do academically, or African scholars, like other scholars. Sadly, several authoritarian regimes in the Horn of Africa and in Africa in general do not like to hear this reality, and they do not like anyone to talk about them, or even to mention the next election, or if they lose, even they don't like to hear the word of lose.
That is allergic to them.
Exactly. Yes, so that's really, it's a big issue, and I can understand their feelings, their egos, in that sense that they don't like someone to talk, about them, about their leadership. They don't like, political participation. Particularly, they do not like these scholars from the West. I mean, we have many diaspora groups, Some of them are living in quite authoritarian regimes, and they have no any rights to talk about their minds. For instance, there's Horn of African diaspora living in the Middle East, for instance.
Yeah,
they cannot talk freely. They live under very authoritarian regimes, or many African, countries, or Asian, countries. So these, the Horn of African diaspora in that part of the world, yes, they have the same feelings as us, as Horn African diaspora in the West, but they do not have a platform as academics, as scholars, to express their, feelings. So, in that sense, I think the authoritarians need really to understand the needs of their societies, and the compromise, and include, others, and offer a platform for the academics and to everyone who wanted to offer them some, suggestions and guide them and help them. And that, at the end of the day, is good for them if they take, such advice and, and views.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf.